Hello, Gitrog Pancake here, hope y'all are doing well. In this video, I will be briefly explaining each card in the main Double Titan Gitrog deck list made by Forgotten Kane, also known as Forge 10. The first category is lands. These are incredibly important, so we don't just run a bunch of basics. Many of these lands die or kill another land, so keep in mind that they will have high synergy with Ramanop Excavator. Fetchlands are amazing because they both get a land into play untapped, and if Gitrog is on the field, they allow us to draw a card. In addition, we can use them for mana until we play the frog if we have Urborg out. For these reasons, we run every fetch that has at least one of our colors in it, along with Prismatic Vista. These being Bloodstained Mire, Marsh Flats, Misty Rainforest, Prismatic Vista, Verdant Catacombs, Windswept Heath, Wooded Foothills, and Polluted Delta. Next up is basics. We only run 4 basics, each with a different name so that they don't stop us while we're tutoring with Tainted Pact. These are obviously forest, snow-covered forest, swamp, and snow-covered swamp. After that, we have lands that tap for either of our colors. We have Bayou, which is fetchable, along with Overgrown Tomb, also fetchable. Then not fetchable, we have City of Brass, Command Tower, Forbidden Orchard, Llanowar Wastes, Mana Confluence, and Gemstone Caverns, which is pretty unique because if it's in our starting hand, we get 1 additional land right off the bat and it taps for both our colors. Otherwise, it's not particularly good. And then we have Nurturing Peatland, which, with Gitrog, can draw us 2 cards by sacrificing. After that, we have lands that don't really fall into any of the categories. These being, first, Bazaar of Baghdad. Generally, we dredge to reach Dakmor. This card is amazing because it lets us dredge off the draw triggers, then discard the dredgers and potentially dredge again if we also discard a land. Cavern of Souls. This lets us play an uncounterable Gitrog or discard outlet if we need it to. Dakmor Salvage. This is our best combo piece, and if you need more explanation, check out the video right here. After that, we have Emergent Zone. This is also part of our main combo and allows us to go off at instant speed. Now more info here. Then we have Homeward Path. We hit it when the frog gets stolen, and Homeward Path allows us to take it back from those gilded drakes. Then Lake of the Dead. Lake of the Dead is one of my favorite cards. It draws us a card when it enters the battlefield because it sacrifices a swamp, and then when it taps, sacrifices a swamp to draw us another card while adding 4 black mana. This synergizes heavily with Urborg. After that, we have Ancient Tomb, which taps for 2 colorless, Crystal Vein, which generates 2 colorless and draws us a card when we sacrifice it, City of Traders, taps for 2 colorless and draws a card when we play another land as it dies, Gaia's Cradle, which can produce a lot of mana, is loopable with crop rotation, and is absolutely ridiculous in general and a must-play in pretty much any green deck. Then we have Phyrexian Tower, which can tap for 2 black mana if we have a creature to sacrifice, like a dork. Twilight Mire. This lets us filter a colored mana into any combination of 2 of the colors we play, and it's loopable with crop rotation as well. And Urborg. This allows all of our green lands and colorless lands to tap for black, but it also synergizes strongly with several of our other lands, as I mentioned earlier. After that, we have ramp. This category is pretty self-explanatory. We play a lot of ramp, so we can play Gitrog ASAP. First up, we have Birds of Paradise, then Boreal Druid, Elves of Deep Shadow, Elvish Mystic, Findhorn Elves, Jorga Tree Speaker, and Llanowar Elves. I don't feel like I need to explain any of these, as I'm sure you understand what they do already. But we also have Priest of Titania, since we play a lot of elves, and other people do as well. This is really good for generating mana. Then Elvish Spirit Guide. This is more of a combo starter, but it produces mana, so I put it here. Just remember that this isn't really a ramp card, it's more part of the main combo. We also have Ramanop Excavator, which doesn't actually fall into any of our categories. It's pretty unique. Nonetheless, it synergizes extremely well with Gitrog and many of our lands like Fetches and Lake of the Dead. And finally, we have Deathrite Shaman. This can be a dork when we need it to be, but we also run it because we can loop it to kill our opponents, which I demonstrate right here. After that, we have artifacts. First is Chrome Mox. Exiling an unnecessary card is worth having the mana available. Then Lotus Petal. This is a good one-time ramp use for most decks. For us, it's a way to generate infinite mana through looping. Then we have Mana Crypt. This doesn't really need an explanation, it's a must-have in any competitive EDH deck. Mox Diamond. Discarding a land is actually good for us if we have the Frog out, but even without him, it's still a good ramp card. Now, Mana Vault, which is a solid one-time use artifact that lets us ramp out Gitrog quickly. Sol Ring, also a must-have, doesn't really need explanation. And Grim Monolith, which, just like Mana Vault, lets us ramp out the frog fast. Lets us ramp out the frog fast. And aside from that, we also have Carpet of Flowers, which is cheap ramp, but since so many players play blue, this is really good for getting lots of mana. Then Wild Growth, which is also cheap ramp. Squandered Resources, which gets us mana in a pinch, gets around split second, synergizes with Gitrog, and helps with comboing off explosively. Then Culling the Weak, which synergizes with our elves and generates a lot of mana, and we also use it to kill Deathrite Shaman in its loop. Dark Ritual, which is amazing ramp and part of the main combo, in an empty library loop, which you can watch right here for more info. Reign of Filth, like Squandered Resources, except only black and a one-turn use. Nonetheless, it also gets around split second, and synergizes with Gitrog. And Cabal Ritual, which is a backup if Dark Ritual is exiled, but it's also a decent ramp, especially if Threshold is met. After that, we have discard outlets. First is Putrid Imp. It only costs 1 mana, so it's cheaper than all of the other ones. And then we have Noose Constrictor and Wild Mongrel. After that, Oblivion Crown, which has Flash, so it can be better in some situations, especially for end-step Sculpt wins, which is coming in a future video, so stay tuned for that. And Chains of Mephistopheles. This really requires a whole video to explain, as it's pretty complicated. Luckily for you, I've already made one. You can watch that right here. On to tutors. First is Green Sun Zenith, which is good for getting any green creature out, but generally used to put a discard outlet into play. Imperial Seal, a strictly worse vampiric tutor, but still a good tutor. Demonic Tutor, which gets us whatever we need for 2 black for 2 mana. Diabolic Intent, just like Demonic Tutor, but we have to sack a creature as well. And since we play so many dorks, we have plenty of creatures to go around. Then Finale of Devastation, which is a good way to get a discard outlet out, but also part of the Deathrite Shaman loop. For more info on that, look right here. And then we have Survival of the Fittest, a good way to get a discard outlet into hand, and an easy way to discard Golgari Grave Troll. Then Mausoleum Secrets. This tutor requires creatures in our graveyard, but it's an additional tutor. At 1 creature, we can get Putrid Imp. At 2, we can get most of the cards in the deck. On to Forbidden Tutors. We have Plunge into Darkness. We call it Forbidden because it exiles cards as it tutors. For Plunge into Darkness, I typically pay 10 life so that I don't run too much of a risk of exiling necessary combo pieces, especially both the Titans. If you do happen to get both Titans and another required combo piece, you're pretty much screwed. Now we have Tainted Pact, which is the other Forbidden Tutor. Because it exiles as you go, you can stop if you hit an essential piece and keep going if you hit one of your Titans. Aside from Forbidden Tutors, we also have Worldly Tutor, which is good for getting a discard outlet or Golgari Grave Troll. Vampiric Tutor, which gets anything you might want. Need a discard outlet? You got it. Need Dakmor? Sure. Need removal to deal with something? Here you go. Then we have Entomb, which is really good for getting Dakmor into the bin so we can combo off. And then Crop Rotation, which is both a combo piece and a value piece. We use it in the Emergent Zone procedure, but we can also use it to get any land we might want, like Dakmor Salvage or Gaia's Cradle, while getting a draw from Gitrog. If you have Gitrog and a discard outlet on the field, and this in hand, you can wait until your next upkeep rolls around, then just cast this, getting Dakmor, and sacrifice Dakmor to Gitrog's trigger, and then combo off there. And finally, Summoner's Pact. We typically use this to get a discard outlet and combo off on the same turn, as we don't want 4 mana going down the drain. On to removal. First is Caustic Caterpillar, which is a creature option for removing an artifact or enchantment. We can grab this with more tutors, and it's cheap. Heck, in a pinch, we can just feed this to something like Diabolic Intent or Culling the Weak. After that, we have Bitter Ordeal. This is an interesting card, and a more recent addition, but it's pretty strong as we can get the Gravestorm count up easily by sacrificing creatures and lands. This is typically used to exile opponents' win cons, and in my personal testing, it has performed exceptionally. After that, we have Nature's Claim, which is a cheap and easy way to remove stacks pieces or something threatening. Abrupt Decay. What Nature's Claim and Caustic Caterpillar can't hit, Abrupt Decay often can. It's uncounterable, but is restricted to CMC 3 and under. However, in competitive EDH, that's usually the vast majority of cards. After that, we have Assassin's Trophy. What Abrupt Decay can't hit, this can. Trophy has the widest scope of removal, while still being super cheap CMC-wise. Aside from straight up removal, we also have cards that target opponents' hands. Each of these is good for removing someone's win con from their hand early on, or remove counterspells before playing Gitrog. these being Duress, Inquisition of Kozilek, and Thoughtseize. Now we move on to card advantage. Each of these gives us extra cards. We run them for the same reason any other deck does. First is Bob, or Dark Confidant, Occam Adversary, Grob, Sylvan Library, Ad Nauseam, and Necropotence. Necropotence might need a bit more explanation, but I have a video for it that I'll put right here. After that, we move on to protection. Sylvan Safekeeper is often used to sacrifice lands and generate draw triggers with Gitrog while giving the frog Shroud. We also have Veil of Summer, which is one of our best safety pieces. It stops everything from blue counterspells to black removal, allowing us to combo off without too much fear. Autumn's Veil, which is a worse version of Veil of Summer, but similar in function. And Grafdigger's Cage. This stops Flash Hulk, amongst other things, but it's really meta-dependent what you put there. And finally, miscellaneous combo pieces. These being Golgari Grave Troll. Dredge 6 is insanely good for us because there's a higher likelihood of hitting a land by milling 6. The troll doesn't generate draw triggers by discarding, so we can still whiff on what 6 are milled. Nonetheless, it's a solid way to try to get to Dakmor with a discard outlet and Gitrog on the field. On top of all of that, more of our tutors can fetch the troll as it's a creature. Next we have Life from the Loam. Many of the toads on the Gitrog Discord server like to call this our best value engine. We make good use of dredging, and its ability is also helpful considering how we sacrifice or mill lands constantly. Everything about this card is inherently useful to us, except for perhaps it being a sorcery. And then we have our 2 titans, Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, and Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre. These are mainly used to shuffle our graveyard into our library when we mill it or discard it, and the reason we run 2 titans is mostly so we can use Forbidden Tutors without the risk of exiling both shufflers being too high. And that about wraps it up for this. If you found this helpful, or if you enjoyed it at all, please be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.